Hi, folks. Welcome to another episode of Film Study. This is Ken McKusick, and let's talk about the offense from that Week 17, Week 16 loss to the Patriots. Joining me to do that is Matt Ruff. Matt, how you doing?
Ken, been a tough year. Continues to be a tough year. My brain is slowly switching to O's season. Unfortunately, really wish it wasn't that case, but getting to the point where it's going to take a pretty miraculous circumstance for the Ravens to have this season continue past week 18. So just unfortunate at this point.
Yeah, it's certainly true. It would take pretty much a miracle right now. This last week, just a horrible triple whammy of events. So we watch the game at home, and the Steelers are kind of running away with it at one point, and then the Lions mount their comeback in the fourth quarter. They get down to the 1 yard line, just as basically arriving at the parking garage to go to the game, and I watch on my phone the rest of the way, and there's all these penalties and weird things that move them back from there, and it was awful. And then of course the Ravens lose that game to the Patriots in comeback fashion again, where they got beat with a 24-13 lead early in the fourth quarter, and Lamar was hurt, and that's the biggest. Most painful hit of all was the Jackson injury in that second quarter.
Yeah, really was just an awful week, awful game for Ravens narratives. You know what I mean? This season almost feels like it can't go away quick enough. And it's funny. I remember at the beginning of the season, you making what I thought was a fairly wise point about people are saying, the playoffs are the only thing that matters. The Super Bowl is the only thing that matters. And you said, hey guys, the Ravens kicking people's butt during the regular season, that matters. That's fun. It makes everyone's life better when that happens. And that's really important. And I almost wonder if this is
they had to make it to the playoffs too.
Right. Yeah, exactly. And I almost wonder, is this the football gods saying, hey, you guys got a little greedy. If that's not good enough for you, I'll show you what this is going to look like if you don't get to the playoffs and run over people in December and it's et cetera. So just a tough week for the Ravens and a tough season overall.
Yeah, very much so. And unfortunately, some of the things, not everything, but some of the things continued in this week. One of the big trends that I can't believe is losing snap count as dramatically as they have been. They lost 71-54 in this game. They're still just 4 of 15 games with 60-plus snaps on the entire season.
Yeah, just an absolutely wild trend. 71-54. Again, you could understand, it was an anomaly. Some odd things happened, but it's not. It is a pure trend for this season. And it's something that we haven't seen in quite some time and really haven't seen in the Lamar era at all, especially when you go back to the Greg Roman era. I mean, we were controlling the clock, controlling the ball, controlling the play clock. And it's just gotten so out of whack. I mean, you call it barbell results, but it's feast or famine. It's either, you're getting a, 4-play touchdown drive, or you're 3 plays and punt. And it's a very, very odd set of circumstances. I'm not sure if I've totally wrapped my mind around why this keeps happening. I think there's various reasons for it. But ultimately, I think a lot of what it comes down to is maybe the team's just not good enough.
Yeah, I mean, there's some of that on offense and on defense. It's kind of been let down both ways. They hadn't necessarily closed out drives by the opponents well, but they also have certainly not been extending drives. They haven't had the real high series success rate we're used to. There's a few more explosive plays, which at the very beginning of the season was probably part of the reason why they were getting fewer plays. They're probably not going for it on fourth down quite as often, or certainly making it as often as you're used to them doing. So frustrations all around in terms of why this is happening. But I know the other teams are going for it like crazy on the Ravens on fourth down. At one point, they'd made 10 in a row, I think, or maybe it was 9 in a row earlier this year. So just has been ugly. All right, well, 2 or 3 in the red zone in this game, which is a nice reversal from a terrible season. And they held New England to 1 out of 3, which is exactly what you'd hope for. It wasn't enough in this game. Nice to see that for a change. The red zone woes this season, though, generally speaking, another trend that is just after leading the league last year in red zone percentage at 75, 76%, whatever it was, to
Mhm.
fall to earth like they have. Ugh.
I mean, if you were to say before this season, you're going to have a team with Lamar, with two very decent wide receivers. I'm not saying they've got Jamar Chase and T Higgins, right? But with Zay and Bateman, two solid receivers, three solid tight ends, Derrick Henry, another solid running back or two behind him. Uh, you would have thought it would have been impossible to be where we are with this team from a red zone perspective. It just doesn't make sense. Obviously, the Lamar mobility decline from the injuries has just been a killer. There's no way around it, and it really affects this team. And I've said to some of my buddies for years, I don't have any evidence to prove it, and I hate just kind of saying things that sound wishy washy. But I've always been convinced that Lamar has risen the tide for all of the boats. And you could say, yeah, sure, you idiot, of course, right? But I actually think it's so much so that it's hard for people to quantify the impact that a truly healthy Lamar has on both an offense and a defense, and the pressure that it puts on another team. And the second we see Lamar not in superhero form, right? And we see him just in the form that he's been over the last handful of weeks, really, since he came back after that Bears game. It's incredible how bad so many people look, or maybe not bad, but they look like they're 2 or 3 steps back. And there's some people who have gotten paid or will get paid, and I think a lot of it is off the back of Lamar. And again, I think that's on both sides of the field.
Yeah, I obviously couldn't agree more. Lamar's health, and this is, I have to always be so careful to couch this, and shouldn't be that way, because people should understand that I'm taking a shot at Lamar in this case, but Lamar's, played through this like a warrior. He's been a guy who certainly has not let his team down in some way by sitting out games that he should have played. But when he has played, he hasn't been the healthy Lamar that he's been in the past, and that the drop off in his play has
Mhm.
been the single biggest factor in the point differential difference for the Ravens. They've
Yeah.
gone from being up, plus 150 team or whatever they were last year to basically being about a zero team.
Mhm.
And it's the largest single contributing factor is the difference in Lamar's play himself. And again, I'm not blaming this on Lamar. It's not Lamar's fault that this has happened this way, but it is the biggest change. I don't think it's age yet. I think I think that a factor, just some of that coming, in
Mhm.
terms of Lamar coming down to earth. I think he could be back to being a 95% of the quarterback he was next year. But to drop from 23 and 24, which were both MVP seasons, even though he got robbed of one, to what's happened this year in terms of inability to move and all the misdirection of the run game being lost because of it. It's a painful season to watch.
And I think what's even more painful is that it looked like Lamar was making strides. I'm not saying he was
Mhm.
back to Buffalo Bills Lamar. You see some of those clips on Twitter where he's just running circles around people, and it doesn't look fair. It's video game like. And while he wasn't there, you saw some steps being made. You saw some steps in the Bengals game. You saw some steps in the first half of this game
Yep.
of him using his mobility to create space in the pocket and buy time. And that's when he's deadly, right? He's gotten a lot smarter. He's gotten a lot better, and he's well studied, and he's been able to take advantage of that. And after watching the first few drives, you really thought this team may have a chance, right? I'm not saying it's a guarantee. We're not, printing Super Bowl tickets, but you're saying to yourself, okay, if Lamar can keep getting 1% healthier each week, right? Can we get to the point where, by the time the playoffs start, you get to, you know what I mean? Maybe he's playing at 70% of the level he has in the past. Maybe you could get to the point where he's playing at 75 or 76%. I don't know. I'm making numbers up, right? But relatively speaking, could you get to that point and you could actually see a little bit of hope? And then you also see some really good fortune come the Ravens' way that I don't think has been talked enough. The Patriots were really banged up. They were missing a lot of really high quality players. They were rotating, they were missing their fourth overall pick. Their left tackle Morgan Moses went out. They were, they're missing some players on defense. Some players on defense were banged up. Their leading tackler and the
Henderson,
yeah,
their running back, and they lost a bunch of guys on
yeah.
defense, but yeah.
And then you look, it's like the Bengals, it was the same way, right? Trey Hendrickson was out. They were missing Shamar Stewart, T. Higgins. You look into the next week, Micah Parsons had just gotten hurt. Love had the concussion, which looked pretty serious. TJ Watt is out, right? And you're almost like, wow, is this the luck kind of reversing to the mean? The awful, awful luck that they really had that first, 7 or 8 weeks of the season. And then on an almost innocuous looking few yard scamper, didn't look like anything was wrong. Next thing they say Lamar could barely walk up and down the steps. He could barely get his shoes and socks off. And it was just an awful change of events for the team. And the thing that I thought was most interesting was Huntley did an okay job, right? Now, Huntley always lacks some pocket awareness. Sometimes it's like he's playing football with like one eye. Like he's pretty good, but he just doesn't have that. He can't see enough of the field or process it enough. But, he came in and I thought Huntley did a pretty fair job. And the rest of the team, it seems like just kind of collapsed around him. Not saying he's a superstar, but just such a frustrating way for that game to go.
Yeah, terrible, certainly, and it did look like the Patriots were falling apart on the field as the game was going on. But that's all it takes is an injury to your star quarterback, and it's over. Anyway, let's move on a little bit because I think you hit on a point I want to talk about, which is Lamar was really moving the ball, I thought, as well in that first quarter as he had since before the injury at Kansas City. So since the first half of the fourth game of the year, that first drive was immaculate. They moved right up the field, a bunch of 14, 17, 18-yard pass plays, and they ran the ball effectively, and they got the ball in on a nice long run by Henry there before they even had a chance to get slowed down in the red zone or whatever. It was just a fantastic drive, and you saw that, and you thought, okay, maybe everything's right, and then they backed it up. Right, and they hadn't stopped anybody in the first drive that in
Right.
so long, and they get the interception to end that drive, and they drove another 64 yards, going back the other way. Lamar's healthy still, of course, and then Henry fumbled the football, and that's the point where pretty much everything changed. I know the Ravens built up a lead in the second half with Huntley, with the New England Patriots still kind of sputtering, but that was the point when they lost Lamar. After that, the Patriots scored, and it was they got back to 10-10 at the half, but it was not it wasn't a game that the Ravens felt in control of. Certainly at that point, with New England getting the ball first in the second half, and Huntley coming back out as the quarterback.
Yeah, my I don't like to overly criticize Lamar. I think, again, like you said, you have to kind of you have to thoroughly explain what you're saying, or else people will kind of come at you with pitchforks. I, for the life of me, don't understand why Lamar doesn't slide. He always does the fall forward dive, and I think that leads him to be more susceptible to hits, and that's how he took this knee. And man, you get a 4-yard scamper, and you get knocked into oblivion, and he couldn't even stand up straight. I really wish Lamar could slide. I think that the quarterback is so important in this league, and you're such a disproportionate amount of the salary cap and the way the offense works that. To get 4 yards and get knocked out of the game when you could have just slid, that really sucks. I mean, I don't know what it is. And maybe some people, maybe they didn't play baseball as a kid or something to that effect. But Lamar is getting to the point where, he's going to really have to start protecting himself. It's
Right.
just, it's not worth having these seasons go down the drain. I mean, this season's been absolutely ridiculous. I mean, in training camp, he got his foot stepped on and he was getting x-rays at the end of it. And then he got his foot stepped on in camp a couple of weeks ago. I'm not saying it was his fault, but then you got the thigh, you've got the knee, you got the ankle, you've got the toe. I mean, it was almost like you were playing a game of operation there, but keeping your body in as good a shape as you can is really important. I'm sure Lamar does exactly what he needs to, but I know as I've aged, I've had to change what I do more and more and more. And
Yeah.
you can't have a 4-yard run knock you out for a few games, not in a playoff race, if you could slide and potentially change it.
And you're 30 something, right, Matt?
Yeah. Yep.
Okay.
37.
So at 62, I can tell you there's a whole nother level coming of things you have to change about your life in terms of to deal with the decline of your body. And unfortunately that's coming for Lamar too, because he's he's probably entering his 50s as a football player next year. And he could still be a good player. Maybe he's in his late 40s, but it's not a good thing to be being very close to age 30 and then trying to figure out how you're going to recover physically to get back and play your best football. Anyway, let's get away from this a little bit. I'm sure Lamar will take additional precautions and the team will with him next year. But the Patriots came back with the consecutive TDs, and that was sandwiched around the no Henry drive, which has been the subject of a lot of sports talk radio in this town and a lot of Twitter anxiety and whatnot. I can't find anything positive to say about the fact that Derrick Henry was not on the field for that drive at all after the way he'd run all over the Patriots for the game to that point.
Yeah, it's funny. I think there's been a lot of fair criticism this year of the coaching. I think there's been a lot of unfair criticism of the coaching. But what I don't understand is this is it. This is life or death. You already saw the Lions lose to the Steelers, right? You had to win. Keaton Mitchell just wasn't as effective. Now's the time to ride the horse that got you here in this game, right? And this was his game. There are other games where Keaton Mitchell is going to be better, just to different styles and everything. And it didn't make sense. I don't understand why they weren't doing more play action with Henry. Like if you're Tyler Huntley and you give up, you run a play action to Derrick Henry, it is going to suck everyone up. And Huntley proved in the Chicago game that he could hit passes. Not saying he's the second coming of Dan Marino, right? But he could hit the passes over the middle. We've got plenty of people who can go over the middle. Zay can run crossers over the middle. Likely, who I don't know if he still plays for this team anymore, he could go over the middle. Andrews, we just paid $1 billion for his 2 catches a game. He can go over the middle. Why aren't we trying to suck up the linebackers and get those guys open in space where Huntley can hit them? I for the life of me, I don't understand that. Even if you don't want Henry touching the ball, his gravitational force is gigantic. And when you take Lamar off the field, I actually think it amplifies his gravitational force because all eyes are on him. So fake the ball to him and hit your other playmakers. It just didn't make sense to me.
Definitely magnifies the relative impact of his gravitational force when he's out of the field. Huntley does not have that gravitas personally as a quarterback. The play that bothered me, the lack of misdirection in it, you could look at it from the all-22, but the screen pass on the last drive went for -5 to Ali was a perfect example of a play that had all the blocking you want in the proper place, but at the expense of any form of misdirection. And all it took was one Patriots player to recognize what was going on, go directly for the receiver Ali before the ball was out of Huntley's hands even. And, already Faalele and Linderbaum were getting ready to release from the inside of the line. By the way, Faalele has been a tremendous gravitational weapon these last couple of weeks. If you haven't noticed it, kind of wake up and stop trying to figure out how he's not blocking somebody. Watch him on a pull and see how the inside linebackers are reacting to him and sliding to hit the pull side when he does that. There are 2 plays in the last 2 games that were just ridiculous amount of movement from the linebackers that he created because of that. And this is a play that really needed some of that. It needed to somehow have some element that was heading to the left instead of trying to set up all blockers. And they had it more than blocked. The problem was that the number 7 Davis beat Flowers on the outside and was in to make the tackle before the ball got there pretty much.
Yeah, I thought that the design of the play, like you said, it was 95% of the way there. The 5% of it just was the thing that ruined the whole thing. I'm also not a big fan of throwing the ball 5 yards, 6 yards behind the line of scrimmage with Huntley because he doesn't have the ability to make up when he's behind, right? When you have vintage healthy Lamar and it's 2nd and 18, he can get 18 yards, no problem. You know what I mean? Not saying you want to be there, not saying it's more likely, right? That would be crazy. But with Huntley, you've got to stay ahead of the sticks. And I thought that that Henry was doing a really good job of getting 3 or 4 yards on first down and just starting to shorten the game, which I think that they've really struggled with this whole year. And then you run a play that, like you said, no misdirection, no eye candy to pull them away, and then you get Ali hit 5 yards behind the line of scrimmage at 2nd and 15, and between that and then the Zay fumble, I wasn't even mad anymore. It took all the anger, all the emotion out of me, and I was like, yeah, that's basically what you get is a play where you had Ali left for dead while perfectly blocked, still left for dead, and then you've got one of our best players doing the same thing that he's always done, which is dancing in the middle of the field, right? And coughing the ball up. And I don't know, that actually helped me get over it a little bit quicker, because it's just like, if it's funny when you said at the beginning of the show, you said it was kind of like a triple whammy of the Steelers winning, the Ravens losing, and Lamar getting hurt. To me, it was almost like a quadruple whammy. It was those three, then it was the wrapper of every Ravens demon hitting at the same time in this game, right? Between maybe questionable usage of Henry or when to run the ball, star players fumbling the ball, defense choking a solid lead in the fourth quarter, pressure not hitting right when you need it, right? Right when you need pressure, it was gone. You know what I mean? Like, it was just the Ravens house of horrors hitting all at the same time, and that was hard to take.
The funny thing about it was, in that fourth quarter, they had, in the overlap between the third and fourth quarter, they hit the quarterback 5 consecutive times, knocked him down 5 straight times. In the middle of that, they had the sack on the punt. So they had 6 consecutive times, if you want to include that, where they knocked the quarterback, even though one of them obviously is the up back in the punt situation, on the ground. They got a pressure on the next play, but the problem was they weren't really generating negative plays out of it. May was just passing for 5 and 6 and 9 yards instead, and that was so ugly in terms of that. I didn't think May was going to keep getting up from that, particularly the hit that Ardarius Washington put on him. He twisted him down, and it looked to me like he was a crumpled mess on the ground. And I thought finally the Ravens might catch a break on that, but it didn't. It didn't happen. Yeah. Anyway, we have to keep moving here. So the Steelers, it would now take the minor miracle for the Ravens to win. The Ravens have to win 2 consecutive games at the Packers, at the Steelers, obviously both on the road, and Pittsburgh has to lose in week 17 at Cleveland, which is, I wouldn't call it a minor miracle. Cleveland will be up for this game in a very big way. They're gonna want to win this game like you've never known. They would love to deal the Pittsburgh franchise a loss like this. Shedeur Sanders certainly wants to win for his job. Myles Garrett wants to pick up another 6 sacks to put that record where the sun won't shine on it for a half a century. It would be great if all those things happen to the Browns. I don't know that I trust the Ravens to hold up their end of it right now. And certainly they're going in as an underdog into Green Bay, I think probably appropriately.
Yeah, for sure. I agree with you. I don't think it's completely far-fetched. But I will say I was impressed with how Pittsburgh played against the Lions. I was really impressed. I watched the whole game. I couldn't take my eyes off it. And there's something about Pittsburgh where you lose Watt, right? So we lost Matabike, and we lose Matabike, and all of a sudden, Myles Garrett has more sacks than our entire team, right? Or practically, I know we got 4 sacks this past game, so we got bumped up, right? The Steelers lose TJ Watt, and they're still pressuring Goff like crazy, and they're like, their ability to generate pressure that affects the quarterback and changes how the quarterback plays is incredible. And I wouldn't be surprised to see them kind of spinning Shedeur in circles, but I do think there's a chance. And it's tough that we play on a Saturday and we won't know what's happening, because right. in theory, you would like to just not have Lamar suit up for the rest of the year, but it's pretty hard to concede if he is able to go.
Right. Obviously that is the case. There's going to be months for him to recover. They obviously need him in this game, but I will say this. I'm looking at the Green Bay Packers injury report. There are 20 names on it. Okay. So Aaron Banks limited, Quinton Bohanna is DNP. Some of these guys are coming back. So Romeo Dobbs is coming back and is full, for example. That doesn't really count, but Josh Jacobs limited, Jordan Love limited, Bo Melton is DNP, Aaron Mosby limited, Colin Oliver full, Sean Ryan limited, Jordan Riley limited, Zach Tom, that's a great player, DNP. Yeah. Lucas Van Ness is limited, Christian Watson was back in full. Christian Welch, the old Raven DNP. Josh Wiley is limited. Dontavian Wicks is full. Evan Williams is limited. John Williams is limited. Savion Williams is full. And Malik Willis, even their second string quarterback, is limited now.
Yeah, he hurt his shoulder on the last play, I think.
Oh, did he? Okay.
Yeah.
Did not know. Okay. Well, and still, the Ravens are underdogs that game, which might be better for them.
Ken, I have a question for you. Slightly off topic, but hopefully relevant to the listeners. I loved the game plan that the Ravens had against the Bears with Huntley. And I thought they used Huntley's legs effectively, the threat of Huntley to run. I thought there was some plays where the read option with Henry was really, really effective, and it allowed Huntley to get some space to run and just got the Bears thinking he could use his legs. Obviously, he's not Lamar, right? He doesn't have the awareness, the field vision, the leverage reading of the opponent that Lamar has. He's got some straight line speed, and that's pretty much it. But he's not Peyton Manning plotting out there, right? When he came in this time, did you like the game plan they had for him? I mean, he completed 9 of 10 passes, but I just thought they could have done more with read option with Henry and more with him just using his legs a little bit and throwing over the middle of the field. I just would have thought they could have done better.
Well, I guess there are a couple of things. First of all, it's not like he's got a bunch of plays installed for him as he will for Green Bay. Assuming, they know he's going to go this week, he'll have a bunch of plays that are installed for him this week. The offense was built for Lamar, and he was an observer for most of those reps. He didn't run a lot of the plays, including probably in the walkthrough practices they have with just learn the dance steps of the plays. So this next week, they can add layers of misdirection if they need to that are appropriate to Huntley. It is a short week, so they'll have to do it quickly, but they'll be able to do some of that. That is one positive thing. I think when I look at what they were able to do by just basically running the ball and almost treating it like they're running out the clock, even though they were not, they were actually building the lead back from, I guess they were down 13-10 right at one point, and then they came back and they scored 2 touchdowns. It was a 10-10 and they scored a touchdown. New England scored a field goal. They scored a touchdown, whichever it was. Those 2 drives where they scored consecutively, they ran the ball very effectively. They moved the ball very effectively down the field. And then New England figured out Huntley's pocket awareness was really the kryptonite they needed to exploit. And they started sending some extra rushers on plays and making his life miserable, where he had to get rid of the ball very, very quickly. And that's when Huntley is not effective. I don't say he can't be effective. He was 9 of 10 in this game, but included in those plays where they crowded the line of scrimmage are like the play for -5 or getting rid of the ball too short to Zay Flowers, such that Zay Flowers has to, use every bit of trickeration he has to try and get extra yards and ends up fumbling. It's the stuff like that where he has to throw way short of the sticks, which just reduces Huntley's effectiveness tremendously. We saw that happen, in the past years when he was the Ravens starter out of necessity, and what that did to reduce Marquise Brown's effectiveness, for example. And we've also seen Tyler Huntley do some wonderful things for this team a couple of different times. We saw him come back and have the drive against the Bears in 21 that brought him back from the brink of being dead to driving all the way down the field after the Bears made just a horrific mistake not to kneel the ball inside the 5-yard line and lost the game because of it. We saw then the taking him to the playoffs with the win over Atlanta, I think it was in 22, that finally got him into the playoffs, and he played pretty well in that game until he didn't anymore and fumbled the ball at the 1-yard line. And it got run back by Hubbard. And then we saw him this year against the Bears pull out one of the most spectacular performances by a Ravens backup quarterback that's ever been. And by my account, it's probably the 4th best. If the Ravens had gone on this season to a deep playoff run, I think we might have moved that well up the list in terms of the greatest backup performances of Ravens history. But we've also seen him be who he was when we lost 6 straight in 2021. And a lot of those games are close, and that's often the case with Tyler Huntley, is you don't end up, having a huge mismatch. It's just, it ends up being not good enough. And that's what it was that year. An 8-3 Ravens team turned into an 8-9 Ravens team after the end of that year. Right.
Yeah, I agreed.
All right, let's move on. We'll talk about some general comments about the offense. He did go 7 of 11 on 3rd down. So you look at the various things. Lamar exceeded his expectation by a wide margin, and Huntley by 2 yards. I mean, so even Huntley by 2 yards, that's good, because that's an overall expectation for a lot of quarterbacks across the league. And you wouldn't expect Huntley, in a game where he's playing as a backup, or frankly, in a game he starts, to be that good, but he was. And Lamar outperformed his opportunity set by 41 yards in this game, 101 net yards versus 60 expected, 4.1 yards per play. And that was despite the fact the Ravens gave him a decent opportunity set. So had a good opportunity set, and then he way exceeded it, is what I'm saying.
Let me tell you about the online cannabis company that's changing the game, Mood.com. They created an entirely line of functional gummies, 100% federally legal THC blends, discreetly delivered right to your doorstep. And here's the best part. You can get 20% off your first order at Mood.com with the promo code RAVENS. Now, I've tried a bunch of their gummies myself. Each one's totally unique. The Sleepy Time gummies knock me out right away. They help me unwind fast, leave me refreshed the next morning. The Epic Euphoria gummies, they're perfect for when your day just isn't going the way you want it to go. What makes Mood special is how they pair the THC with natural herbs and adaptogens. You won't find blends like this at any local shop. They've got gummies designed for focus, relaxation, clarity, even energy, all made from cannabis grown on small, family-owned American farms. No pesticides, no shortcuts, just high-quality weed you can trust. Plus, Mood backs everything with a 100-day satisfaction guarantee. So head on over to Mood.com, check out their amazing selection, and don't forget to use the promo code RAVENS at checkout to save 20% off your first order.
So for Lamar, they gave him 4 ample time and space opportunities. He completed 3 out of 4 for 55 yards. 2 ball out quicks, he went 2 of 2 for 22 yards. And 4 pressure events, he went 2 of 4 for 24 yards. All those numbers way above expectation for each of the 3. He didn't run the offensive line out at any pressures, but he only had those 10 pass plays before he was hurt, and was 41 yards better, as I mentioned, than expectation, which is an average throw is 4.1 yards better than what you had expected based on the outcome there. That's otherworldly, and that's the reason why I think, watching Lamar play that well so early, the fall was that much worse when he, took a seemingly not terrible knee to the back. He's certainly taken those kind of hits before, and then all of a sudden that becomes the sort of debilitating injury he can't return from. And again, I'm not saying quit on the team or anything like that, because I don't think it's true. I think he'd have rather been there than anywhere else in the world. In terms of watching watching a team on TV, or actually he came back here and watched for the TV from the sideline. That point was made yesterday that, maybe he does just stay in the clubhouse and try and continue to get treatment and whatnot and feel sorry for himself there. But he came out to the sideline and he was, actively rooting for the team. It's just that, obviously he wasn't able to play at that point.
Yeah, I've heard some people criticizing Lamar for not playing and not going back in. I thought that was a bit ridiculous. I like you said, Lamar would have much rather been on the field playing. He got a Toradol steroid shot or pain relief shot, whatever that is. Said it just didn't touch it. I don't know. I think that, truly, I think that with the effort that Huntley gave, they should have won the game. And just very disappointed they didn't. And if Lamar is having a hard time tying his shoes or bending over, I don't want Lamar out there. You know what I mean? I think he's tough. I don't see the need to hurt yourself further. So I don't know. I thought that some of that chatter was a bit ridiculous, of saying he didn't quit on the team. He didn't do anything like that.
Yeah, your team is losing. Your team is not performing up to expectations for your fan base. A lot of stupid freaking things get said. A lot of incredibly stupid things. There's a searching for blame that is cast such a broad net. A lot of tuna get caught in. A lot of dolphins get caught in that tuna net. And there is a need to hyperbolize to a degree that is just irrational. It's if you think Fale is having a bad season, okay, that's a reasonable take on what's going on. Anytime you put every play he does that, attach that to any lineman, I can tell you that's ridiculous. It's absolutely absurd. It's hyperbole. It doesn't make any sense, and it's not true of literally any trait that you could attach to any lineman, that he always does something wrong. And he's a very frustrating player, for example, but there's a lot of hyperbolization of just how bad he is. And there's other things too about this team that are hyperbolic. The one thing that I don't think is really too hyperbolic to say is that, the difference in Lamar's play, and again, because of the injuries, not because of any fault of his, is what's really held this team back. And that's not, again, we're not blaming him. It's all based on the injuries, because we saw in that first half that he was great again. He was back at the Lamar level, that we'd hope for. But it's been the single biggest factor. And I hate the fact that people say, what are you talking about? Everybody's had injuries. Nobody's had any serious injuries here. What do you think? The Ravens aren't any worse? But yeah, they are. They're in a much worse position than just about any other team with their injuries, because they lost their superstar quarterback. Even if it's just, in his case, having him degraded from the level he's played at in 23 and 24 to a league average quarterback for, a good stretch of games in here.
Yeah, agreed. And you and I have always discussed, it's a blame pie, and you share the slice of the pie.
Yeah.
For anyone says it's all this or that, it's completely ridiculous. I think that there's definite blame that goes to Harbaugh, definite blame that goes to EDC, definite blame that goes to the players. And I think I can make some pretty good arguments as to why that is the case. It's not all one person, one thing, one group. It's funny you mentioned Faalele. I think he could be so talented if he just got coached in a way that maybe he was more receptive to it. He has such ability, and you see some of the plays he makes are incredible. I know a lot of people don't see that, right? They choose to dump the plays where he does a really good job, but he manages to do a really good job. But man, I have never seen someone lose in as loud a fashion as he does. And he'll lose, and then somehow he'll end up being 10 yards away from the play, just kind of looking in circles, right? And people will play that on Twitter over and over again. And I think it's too harsh on the guy. At the same time, you're like, man, what the hell was going on here? You know what I mean? Like, why did he do this? He's more talented than this. And I think people are just way too crazy with the Faalele blame, but I also think that the guy's got way more potential than he's showing. Well, you're muted, Ken.
Yeah, they ran the ball effectively in this game, 5.4 yards per carry when you exclude the one kneel they had to end the half. It was weird end of the half that they tried to run a play with 19 seconds, almost turn it over on the Andrews brain fart, and then they don't. Their by series efficiency was solid in this game. 18 out of 24 times they got a first down or a touchdown after being awarded a first down, whether at the beginning of a drive or by earning a first down. They ran the ball 32 times. They passed at 21.
Mm-hmm.
If you look at that ratio, you do not lose an NFL game very often that you have that ratio of runs to passes. Your winning percentage should be very high. And the old axiom, teams don't win because they run because they win. Mm-hmm. That would have been right there on that. And they just could not find a way. They were basically about 1 to 2 plays short of running for additional first downs to make that come to fruition there. And they got the 2 turnovers they wanted, but they also gave away two plays and it frittered away their edge in terms of the turnovers in that game.
Ken, I'm at the point where I think these fumbles are ridiculous. I get that fumbles happen. I drop things too, and no one's hitting me, punching me, or anything. It happens. I think that this team, as Mike Tomlin said years ago, all you have to do is be patient and wait. The Ravens will burn the house down. They'll always burn their own house down. Bill Belichick has said the Ravens are the Ravens' worst enemy. And this team just has a knack for it. I mean, you take Lamar out of the equation. Do we have 2 better players on this team than Henry and Flowers, right? Especially on offense. I mean, those are the best players we have. And, there's a reputation now. I mean, the pass rusher for the Pats, he said the Ravens have a bunch of speed skaters on offense. He said, we know who they are. They hold the ball out and we're going to go after it. And time again, it has happened. I mean, have the Ravens won a game that Henry's fumbled in? They
won week 2 against the Browns, but he didn't lose the ball.
Browns game.
Yeah.
I mean, they lost a big Steelers game last year when he fumbled. You know what I mean? But if you look at it, he's fumbled, I think 7 times as a Raven. They've won maybe 1 or 2 of those. It's just, these fumbles are so killer to this team. And Flowers, some people get really upset with him doing some of the dancing that he does. Sometimes it's okay, but I thought if Flowers just caught that ball coming across the field and then just tried to turn it up to the upfield to the side, I thought he had a lot of momentum. Instead, he hits the brakes right in the middle of the field. Now you're surrounded. Now you got a guy on your left, your right, and you got someone behind you, right? You got to keep running to safety, and I don't know how to coach that out of him. And sometimes he's great at it, right? Like he's good at it, but man, you're 5'9", 5'10", you're 170, 185 pounds. You got to stop dancing in some of these areas. It's not worth it.
So it's like there needs to be a code word on the field, and they may have this. I've just never heard it. I've never seen it exercised at practice, but there needs to be a code word like fire from behind him that says basically, look, take care of the football immediately. There's somebody behind you about ready to knock the ball loose. And it might still be too late for him to, hear it, process it, and retuck the ball properly, but or go down at that point. But there needs to be a code word of that type. I mean, they need to have some way to help him manage the situation from behind, because that is where a lot of the problems come from.
Yeah, and I also just don't know how much value there is in doing the dancing. Get upfield, get as many yards as you can. Right. You know what I mean? And take the safe play. Like, this team has to quote Tomlin again, burnt the house down on how many occasions, right? Stop burning the house down. You are more talented than every other team you face, right? Why are you trying to do things that add variance to the other team's defense? Like dancing with your smallest player in the middle of the field with defensive linemen coming from behind. Catch the ball, get upfield, and fight another down. It doesn't make sense to me, and I just wish this team could get over it. And I fear we're at the point now where this season's down the tubes.
Well, and this season being down the tubes may end up, obviously, and we'll get into this a little later, so I don't want to jump into it right now, where there are major changes, whether it means the head coach directly, whether it means offensive coordinator, defensive coordinator. I certainly think it's time for the Ravens to find their next great offensive line coach at a very minimum. I think he's the least change they can make is to move on from Warhop at this point. And there are people who think it might be Eric DeCosta's end. I don't believe that for a second, by the way, not even for a slight second. I don't even really believe necessarily that if the organization, even if they decide to move on from Harbaugh, that they won't try and find some role for him in the organization, perhaps. Mm-hmm. So that's a possibility too, but let's come back to that a little bit.
Sure.
So anyway, Huntley in the game didn't have nearly the opportunity set that Lamar had. So I just want to go through this quickly. He had 1 ample time and space, 5 ball out quicks, and 5 pressures. So it tells you right away they were doing more to go after him to generate pressure, and they were willing to take some chances to do it. But there's only 1 ATS. He completed it for 5 yards, and guess what? It went to Zay Flowers, and then he turned the ball over anyway. In 5 ball out quicks, he went 4 of 5 on those for 26 yards, 5.2 yards per play. That's been a general Huntley problem, is when the ball's out quickly, it's schemed out too quickly. So you tend to have even worse results than you normally would, where you expect 6 yards per target for a quarterback who, knows what he's doing and is able to get the ball out quickly. And it's not a fair thing to say to Huntley, but Huntley's very skittish in the pocket and doesn't have that presence to wait for the window to be right to throw the ball. And then he had 5 pressures. He completed 4 of 4 and also took a sack on those 5 pressures. So the 4 of 4 were for only 27 yards. Now there's nothing wrong with 5.4 yards on pressure. There is something wrong when you don't do anything with ample time and space in the ball out quicks that you do have relative it. So he ran the offensive line out of a pressure. In fact, it was a pressure he caused by Emory Jones that might have turned into something worse. He ran him out and got a gain. I don't remember how long it was, but he got away from a pressure anyway in that situation. And he overperformed his opportunity set in total by 2 yards. The opportunity set just was terrible for him, and it was okay for Lamar. To have 56 expected yards on 11 throws and get 58 expected yards is not that impressive. To have 60 expected yards on 10 throws, which so Lamar obviously had 1 less throw and 4 more expected yards, and beat it by 41, that's a hell of a difference. And we saw in the first half a a Lamar who was playing at really the best he's played since the very beginning of the year, and so sad to see him lost again after that.
Yeah, I'd just like to say on the Huntley front, Ken, I think what he did was good enough to win the game. I know it wasn't impressive. 5 ball out quicks, you're 4 for 5, 26 yards, 5.2 yards per play. That's good enough to win when you have Derrick Henry running down their throats. I don't know if you saw the actual broadcast, because I know you were at the game and I know you kind of studied the tape after, but the Patriots had a player getting hurt every series on defense. They were beat up. They were getting rotated in. I thought the offensive line looked pretty decent, especially for how much flack they've taken. And that should have been enough. I would have liked to see them roll Huntley out of the pocket a few times. I would have liked to see them do a little bit more play action. And I would have liked to see him fake it to Henry and then keep it himself and come around the formation and just make the Patriots think it's not just keying on Huntley in the pocket, him being skittish, going crazy. There's more to life than that. And I thought that a lot of that really worked against the Bears. But, if you can get 5 yards per play with your backup, I mean, they were up by 11 points. You would hope that the defense could hang on and that you could, make enough headway to win. And it's just a shame that
in fairness, they built all that lead under Huntley. It wasn't a matter of he was gifted that league. I mean, it was it was a 10-10 game, right? I thought, or if it wasn't 10-10, it might have been 10-7 even. They were Huntley had to build that lead. So it's I want to be fair to Tyler on again here. I thought he did as good a job as could be hoped running the offense in that second half. Obviously a lot of it was the running game. They're very effective with that, but it's still in the end. I mean, it is the difference between Huntley and Lamar that was just disastrous in this game. So anyway, let's talk a little bit about the running backs, because that's been a source of consternation on a couple of fronts here. Henry had 24 snaps, Mitchell 19, and Ali 12 in this game. No pony. No problem with the 12 snaps for Ali, by the way, but they were not probably in quite as many obvious passing situations on third down in that second half in particular, where they were still trying to grind out first downs until the next to last drive, only the last 2 plays where they had any kind of we have to score right now in a 2-minute offense. And they didn't have the ball at the end of they did have the ball at the end of the half, didn't they, for 2 plays, but they didn't have the ball for most of the last minute of the first half because they were stopping the New England drive, which progressed all the way down the field to the 20-yard line or so before they got the sack fumble from Washington. Okay. So Henry had his second consecutive very good yards after contact game. In this game, 6.0 last week, yards after contact per attempt. This game was 4.6. His missed tackles force numbers still aren't great. He's at like 3 on 18 or something this week, and he's got 0.13 for the season. 0.14 was his lowest as a rookie. That's missed tackles forced divided by total carries. So it doesn't mean that he gets a missed tackle forced on 13% of its carries. It might mean that he has 2 or 3 missed tackles forced on some plays, and they get divided by his total carries. But the lowest he's ever been in his career as a rookie was 0.14. So if you're looking for a second reason why the offense hasn't been as good, the missed tackles forced rate by Henry has not been as good. We should have expected regression in his overall play, being his age and being the fact that he's coming off one of the greatest seasons a running back has had in the 21st century. But his missed tackle forced rate has gone down dramatically to the lowest rate of his career. And it's been one of the things that's really hurt the Ravens. That's a lot of yards he's left on the field in missed tackles he's broken in the past. And it'd be an interesting thing to try and figure out what's an average number of additional yards per missed tackle that he gets. But if we're looking at multiplying by, giving him 50% more missed tackles than he's had right now, which might bring him up to close to his career average, then I wouldn't be surprised if you're talking about an extra 200, 250 yards. We'd be talking about that he'd have.
Yeah, especially with his speed. Once he gets in that second level, and then you start having safeties or corners trying to tackle him, right? That's when it's open season for him. We're still pretty impressed with his effort on the year, but it's definitely a step back from what it's been in the past. And that's a reality. I mean, his missed tackles forced is about half. The rate is about half of what it was last year in 24. And
Well, last
that's
year, just to add some color to that, he had 87 missed tackles forced, which was the highest number of his career. This year, he's got 33, and he's had about a little bit more than 2/3 as many attempts. So you'd figure him, if you gross that up to 50, based on him having only 2/3 as many attempts, he's still his reduction has still been, 40% or more that he's lost out of his missed tackles. So I'm trying to look and see if there's a number that would make sense for this, but I can't come up with it right now in terms of how many yards I would ascribe to that, other than to say it's a pretty damn significant amount. Like it might be 8, 9, 10 yards per missed tackle that you could add to his rushing total. If it had been a similar number. So maybe that's a little high. Anyway, they did run the ball effectively. I think that the question everybody wants to know is why the hell wasn't he in the game when the clock was running down to 5 minutes? So he had the touchdown run. He had a 4-yard run and a 2-yard run after they got him down in range. And that was his last. Those are his last snaps of the game, I believe. I don't believe he played at all on that drive that took him from about 9 minutes down to 5 minutes, where they moved the ball for a couple of first downs. But they weren't able to ultimately close out the game, and we just didn't have Henry on the field.
Yeah, agreed. I think his last touch was at 12 minutes and 39 seconds when he scored. Okay.
So some of the things that have been said today, and this is, I've been, there are things said about Harbaugh that I think are, generally speaking, unfair, hyperbolic, stupid, born of the fact that there's no answer to do this. But there's other things that are very reasonable criticisms of him. And one of the things that I'm bothered by communication-wise came up this week is that he externalizes the discussion about the running backs in a way I can't find acceptable. So, there was some mention made of Willie Taggart and Henry talking about the chance that Mitchell should start this series, then he would go in or something. I'm like, in what world is Derrick Henry, first of all, ceding carries to Keaton Mitchell voluntarily at that point when he's obviously playing very well? So I wasn't buying into that component. The second of all is if there's a problem with Willie Henry being on the field because of an injury he needs to get rubbed out, maybe he's cramping, or he's got an equipment problem, no problem. Then Willie Taggart should call up to Monken and say, hey, look, Monk, we got a limited set of plays we can run here. I won't tell you how to do your job, but Henry won't be ready to go for about 3-4 minutes here while we work on his calf or whatever it might be.
Sure.
And that's going to happen, and that's fine. If Harbaugh could have said something about that. Henry had issues with cramping. We couldn't get back in there, and we went under the circumstances. We would have preferred to have Henry in there, but we couldn't because he wasn't physically ready to go. If that was the case, fine. But he didn't say that. He wouldn't throw the player under. He maybe would not throw the player under the bus, but it's also the kind of thing that he should have no fear about saying that. Saying that it's difficult to change it in real time, or saying in retrospect and saying, well, I'm now watching the game from here and I didn't have any ability to talk at the time. That kind of externalization to me is not acceptable. He honestly, if he said, I didn't speak up at the time, it was the wrong judgment, that would be okay. If he wants to say that, but I don't like him externalizing the thing and basically talking about it as if it's a situation that he's not involved in. He is on the headset loop. He's got to understand what the situation is. And, he's got to try and either figure out how to get Henry in there. Maybe, it might be a situation, an extreme situation where you might decide you want to call a timeout if you think you can get, if 2.5 minutes is going to get him closer to playing, which it might not have. I mean, we don't know. Derrick Henry's not on the injury report today. I'll say that. But if he had been hiding an injury they couldn't do anything about, there's no timeout is going to fix that situation. And he probably would not have an answer for it that would have come out in the Monday press conference about it.
Yeah, but Derrick Henry just said it was part of the rotation? He said it was Keaton's turn.
Yeah.
right? Something to that effect. I won't get into a whole dissertation on Harbaugh. I think some people are, too harsh. I think some people are too easy. All in all, maybe loosely where I stand there is, I think he's had a lot of shots with this group. I thought he's had a lot of success. I thought there's been some failure there. I'm at the point where, I would like to see a different version of this without him. I'm not going to say, oh, his challenge record or his timeout usage. I think a lot of that's hogwash anyway. I think that he's been given a lot of very good teams with a lot of very good players. And overall, I would have hoped for some better success over his tenure, looking at as a wide tenure. But I'm not going to sit here and say it wasn't a successful tenure. But I don't know. I think that it would be nice to maybe get a different voice and see what they could do. No guarantee it's going to be better. It could be worse.
That's part of the risk situation here is the Ravens, if they decide they make this move, and betting markets seem to think they will now.
Really?
That he's the second most likely next coach to be fired, I think, on Polymarket.
Mm-hmm.
You can look it up if you want to while we're doing the rest of this. A few other things about scheme here before we get on. We have to get on a break here in just a moment, but Mitchell is also suffering from the lack of misdirection from the offense, and Huntley cannot provide it to him. So that was part of the frustration in terms of getting him in there at 5 minutes. Mitchell, effective earlier in the game. He had 3 carries for 10 yards exactly, with a nice assist from a foul Lele push to get a first down on the first drive he was in, I believe. They used the counter excessively here. By the way, when you see them doing that, this is a very key giveaway that Lamar Jackson is healthy. Okay, and we really believe the Ravens are going right. When they pull 2 men from right to left or left to right, either direction, that's a very strong indicator that they're willing to lean on Lamar Jackson's maneuverability to get them out of trouble if something goes wrong. They had 6 2-man pulls in this game. I think they did one of them after Huntley came into the game. So very, very positive, thing we were seeing there. It just Huntley didn't have an answer for the crowded line of scrimmage. There was nothing he had that he could respond with there. And the Ravens, they tried a little bit of things with set and chip blocks. It wasn't much because they didn't really use numbers in the rush as often. And even when they did use numbers, and they used some, there were about 4.5 rushers per play. Actually, 4. I'm looking at the wrong 4.6. How many rushes did they use on average for the game? It's in the article. I'll direct you there, but I think it's about 4.5. But anyway, with the amount of rushers that they used, 0.62 eligible receivers set to block per play even seemed low. And part of that is trusting your tackles to take care of the New England edge rushers, which they did a good job on. They didn't do nearly as good a job, and as we'll get into the second episode, in the middle of the offensive line, stopping some of that pressure. And that's where some of that breakdown was. Anything about the use of Mitchell, the use of heavies, say, in this game, anything about the eligible receivers as blockers you want to make a comment on?
I would have liked to see Huntley fake it to Mitchell, and then Huntley pulls it and runs around the formation. I think that if you can get that in the defense's mind, it's going to take people off of just focusing on Mitchell and people crashing on Huntley. I think that Huntley's legs, again, he's not Lamar, right? No one's saying he's Lamar, but he does have some speed, and I thought he used the legs effectively to keep the Bears off balance. I think that when you're Huntley, you have got to be so vigilant that you're keeping the defense off balance. When you have a healthy Lamar there, you could have an idiot calling plays, and Lamar is going to be able to turn a lot of plays into success. With Huntley, it's got to be able to keep them off balance. And I just think it's really interesting that, like you said, he had a couple decent runs earlier in the game, but then by the time Lamar was out, I mean, he was basically dead to rights. And Huntley, he didn't have any runs in the game. I mean, he finished the game 2 for 2. I can't remember if those were scrambles or design runs, but man, I would just have liked to see him put up a 7-yard run here or an 8-yard run there. and then see if that backs the defense off a little bit and gives you just a little bit more breathing room.
Yeah, so I think the 2 for 2 was a kneel at the end of the first half plus a 3-yard run where he ran the Ravens out of a pressure. So it wasn't any design runs.
Right.
There were zero designed runs unless you call a kneel a designed run in that game.
Do you think that would help Ken? Just getting a design run or two for him? Like just get the defense thinking differently.
Yeah, it doesn't even have to be a run necessarily, but I'd first of all, I'd try one of the old tired play action boots, because I think that if you have Henry in the game, the defensive end is going to crash.
Yeah.
And you have a good chance to buy him time and space outside the pocket. I like the rolling pocket plan also. If you kind of max protect with that with a late release, you might be able to get Huntley a target down the field that the Ravens could get more excited about and give him a chance to push the ball a little bit. But I wasn't optimistic about the Ravens' chance to score in a 2-minute drill with Huntley, given the need to move quickly. And what had worked, and what could have worked still at the 5, down as they were taking the clock down to 5 minutes, was continuing to run for first downs and keep the ball away from the Patriots and keep them from scoring the go-ahead touchdown. Once they scored it, the chance to come back, but to my mind, was very, very slim.
Yep.
All right, Matt, always a pleasure talking football with you. Tell folks where they can talk football with you online.
Yeah, you can find me at 20KidRock on Twitter.
All right. Other folks out there, thanks for listening as always. We are going to get to your questions in the second half of the show. Please use hashtag Filmstudy Mailbag for questions. Looking forward to them because we always got great questions every week now. And if you want something explained, and in particular, if there's something that I don't do a good job of explaining, but I use in terminology every week that is difficult maybe to understand, toss that in as a question. I've got all kinds of time now to do 1 minute and to 3 minute videos during the off season, especially, but even during a week like this where we don't want to think about football the same way, I'm happy to go through and create a short video on that. We did put one out just recently. Take a look at it if you want to, about the 6 Ravens who now have a sack and a reception career. And Tez Walker joined the group this week, which was kind of an interesting thing. Matt, thanks again for coming on.
All right, Ken.
And we'll talk to you next time on Film Study.